My name is Mark Brantly, Premier of Nevis. We have employed state-of-the-art technology using fiber optic cable across the island of Nevis and using CCTV surveillance. The idea here is a commitment from my government to have a safer and more secure island for our citizens and residents. And so this was a massive investment made by us in running fiber optic cable across the island and putting in cameras and in commissioning just recently this center, which acts as a nerve center for the entire system island-wide. We are taking and using technology to take security to the next level here on the island of Nevis, and we're very proud about this collaboration that we've done to create for the island a much safer and secure environment.
My name is Evelyn, and I am running for the constituency of Nevis 10. And I'm here because I want to be re-elected to continue to serve the people of constituency Nevis 10 and the people of Nevis, and by extension the people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I believe that I have what it takes to represent and to represent well. I believe that representation requires commitment, dedication, passion, and service with compassion. I believe that I bring all of that and more. I believe that I bring the energy that is required to go to Bastille and to represent and represent well.
My name is Alexis Jeffers, and I am the proud representative of Nevis 11, which includes St. Thomas and St. James. I have been the representative of this proud constituency since June of 2020. You have said in the past that you needed quality representation, you needed serious representation and dedicated representation, which was lacking for 20 years prior to 2020. So I'm asking the people of St. James and St. Thomas Parish once again to repose your confidence, your trust in me once again to go back to Bastille and champion your cause there as your representative of Nevis 11.
My name is Mark Brantly, and I'm the proud leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement and the exceedingly proud representative of the people of District 9, comprising the parishes of St. John's and St. Paul's. Since 2007, the people of Number 9 have voted for me consistently and have sent me to Bastille. Election after election, they have reposed their trust and confidence in me. Some say, why should we send you to Bastille? I think the answer is simple, that in me you have someone who is committed, someone who's dedicated, and someone who's strong. Someone who will stand up in Bastille for what is best for my constituents and best for the island of Nevis. My name is Mark Brantly, Premier of Nevis. We have employed state-of-the-art technology using fiber optic cable across the island of Nevis and using CCTV surveillance. The idea here is a commitment from my government to have a safer and more secure island for our citizens and residents. And so this was a massive investment made by us in running fiber optic cable across the island and putting in cameras and in commissioning just recently this center, which acts as a nerve center for the entire system island-wide. We are taking and using technology to take security to the next level here on the island of Nevis, and we're very proud about this collaboration that we've done to create for the island a much safer and secure environment. My name is Mark Brantly, Premier of Nevis. We have employed state-of-the-art technology using fiber optic cable across the island of Nevis and using CCTV surveillance. The idea here is a commitment from my government to have a safer and more secure island for our citizens and residents. And so this was a massive investment made by us in running fiber optic cable across the island and putting in cameras and in commissioning just recently this center, which acts as a nerve center for the entire system island-wide. We are taking and using technology to take security to the next level here on the island of Nevis, and we're very proud about this collaboration that we've done to create for the island a much safer and secure environment.
Good evening, all. Let me start by saying how honored I am to be here seated with the candidates and to everyone here and the viewing audience online. Tonight is a special night because it is all about the youth. I know most people overlook the youth, but when we reached out to our candidates and let them know that we have questions, that there are things that our members were not so clear about, guess what happened? They allowed us to be on this forum, so we appreciate it. So Honorable Mark Brantley, Honorable Alexis Jeffers, and Honorable Evelyn, a special thank you from the entire youth arm for allowing us to have a voice. Okay, so before we get into the questions, I would love if each of you would introduce yourselves, and for the sake of those who do not know, just indicate the areas that you are responsible for. Mr. Jeffers.
Good evening, and thank you, Nikesha. And of course, I want to welcome you to the platform this evening. First time I believe you're hosting such an esteemed show, an esteemed gentleman along with you as well. And I want to say this is a platform for you to excel and to grow as well. I want to say good evening to all who are listening and viewing this town hall meeting this evening. This evening we are focusing on our young people. And indeed, I would say it is an important discussion this evening because young people, we have always heard, is the foundation of our future. But the foundation has to be built now, and of course, by building it now, it means that the future starts today and not sometime a year or years from now. So it is important for you to be a part of the process, and it is important for you to engage us as politicians as well, because the plans, programs, and policies that we put in place as a government will certainly affect you years to come. So no need being away from the process now and then hoping that 5 years from now things will just automatically fall into place. So that is why these discussions are important, and that is why I'm happy that we're here this evening to take some of your questions and to answer them based on what we have planned and what we have done as well as a government and what we intend to do in the future. So it is important for you to be here, and I thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself. I must say also that I am the candidate for the upcoming federal elections in constituency number 11, which includes the parish of St. James and St. Thomas. And indeed, I was first elected back in 2020. Obviously, we're here contesting a new set of elections for all of the reasons that we have spoken about in the past. We can get into those again too.
But I'm exceedingly proud of the team that we've put together, the Honorable Evelyn, who will shortly introduce himself in number 10, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers in number 11. And we have demonstrated, I think, the type of quality leadership, strong leadership that puts the people of Nevis first, that I think the people of Nevis want. And so we are appealing to the electorate to come out in their numbers and to vote overwhelmingly for the Concerned Citizens Movement. And we are appealing to our youth in particular to get engaged. A lot of young people say, oh, they're not interested in politics. I want them to understand that politics impacts so much of what they do. What policies are in place for scholarships? What policies are in place for training? What policies are in place for health? What policies are in place for the economy? All of these impact young people. And I think that young people need to understand that this is about them. This is not an old people thing. This is about them, and they need to engage and need to get involved. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Evelyn.
Thank you very much. And Keisha, let me say good evening to you. And good evening to my colleagues here on the stage, Honorable Brantley, Honorable Alexis Jeffers. And I want to commend you for taking this bold initiative, you and the youth arm. I want to commend those who are here to support you. And I also want to congratulate you and your new executive as well.
Thank you.
On being elected overwhelmingly to lead the youth arm of the Concerned Citizens Movement. And I think this is the first step in probably a lot of things to come from the youth arm, and we hope that you all would be extremely active.
Definitely.
And I think that this evening, this forum, which the youth arm is leading, is demonstrating that you all are indeed ready to get active. So I want to commend you and the youth arm for this initiative. And of course, I would like to join my colleagues as well in saying that it is always important when we should engage with our young people. The young people of Nevis are the persons who will be up here in the next few years. We are blazing the trail now for the younger generation. And so we always say that the young people are the leaders of tomorrow. And so it is important that you get involved in the process now. And it is important that you engage us. And so those of you who might be interested in politics in the future, that at least you get a feel of what being in the political arena is like, get a chance to question us, get a chance to feel how we are feeling in some way. And so I want to thank you all for this forum. I want to say how impressed I am that the youth arm is doing this. I also want to say that you mentioned earlier that sometimes the youth feel neglected, but I don't think that the young people of Nevis have ever felt neglected under the CCM-led Nevis Island administration. And I know for one that since I became the Minister of Youth in 2017, I've always ensured that the young people, the issues of the young people are brought to the fore, the young people are well looked after. And so I do not believe that the young people of the island of Nevis can ever feel left out or ignored. And as the Minister of Youth on the Nevis Island administration, in the Nevis Island administration, I will ensure that the young people of Nevis would always have a voice. So once again, it's my pleasure to be here tonight, and I commend you and the youth arm for this initiative.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have some questions right here from myself and other youth members. We look forward to hearing what you have in store for us. So let us get the ball rolling. All right. So the first question, are there any ministerial portfolios in the federal government that holds particular appeal for you if elected and this portfolio secured? How will the work in the ministry benefit young people on Nevis?
Well, if I can take a crack at that, I think all of us have been assigned portfolios prior to the dissolution of the Parliament and, of course, the decisions taken by Dr. Harris to ask the Governor General to revoke our appointments. The Honorable Eric Evelyn has been a passionate campaigner for the environment. The Honorable Alexis Jeffers has, I think, in a short space of time, revolutionized agriculture on St. Kitts. You know, in fact, I commented just the other evening that this innovation of the night market was done by the Honorable Alexis Jeffers over in St. Kitts. And we now see it becoming a fixture. Even after he's no longer there, they're continuing with this notion of the night market. Just one example of the innovation that was brought. And I have, for the past 7 years, been involved as Foreign Minister, Minister of Aviation. I am passionate about diplomacy. I believe that as the head diplomat for the country in St. Kitts and Nevis, I'm very proud of the fact that for 7 years we have had no scandals. That our country for 7 years has not been embroiled in a single diplomatic incident. That we have had a very good run of navigating the world. And it is a very difficult world to navigate, but we have done so skillfully. And I think that that speaks volumes to how we've been able to manage. So I'm very passionate about it. How does it affect young people? I think that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I've used it to positively impact young people. One immediate thing that comes to mind is the number of scholarships that we've been able to get for young people across the world, meaning that young people are now studying in far-flung places, perhaps places we haven't heard of before. I can think of places like Azerbaijan, places like Morocco. We have in Latin America, Mexico, Chile. All of these are countries that we now have scholarship opportunities to, and our young people can access Romania, these various countries that perhaps were off the beaten path, but now as the world keeps shrinking, our people can access those scholarships. I have been preaching to our young people to take advantage of these opportunities. I know some say it's far, they don't want to be so far away from their families, but the truth is that when you compare the cost of an education, you compare what it would cost your parents to go and borrow money from the bank. And many, many young people are burdened with student loans for many, many years, even after they graduate. Compare yourself to somebody who gets it for free. And you come back after 3 or 4 years, you have no student loan. It means that you can put your resources to work immediately from whatever job you're able to secure to build yourself. Your counterpart, who has a student loan, has to meet the bank. In fact, I spoke to a friend of mine from St. Kitts, and she indicated that she was making her final payment on her student loan from Development Bank, and she studied almost 20 years ago. So that gives you an idea of how long it takes some people to pay off that debt, and that is why I've been very passionate about training. I myself benefited from scholarships. Without them, I'm not sure that I would have been able to go to university. So I understand what it is like not to be able to afford and to encourage our young people. So as Minister of Foreign Affairs, my staff always used to laugh because the very first thing I asked for when I met with foreign diplomats, foreign ministers from different countries, is there training that's available in your country, and what can we benefit from? And as I said, our people have gone across the world, Israel, you name it. We have sent people, Serbia, across the world to study. And to me, that is beneficial. They come back not only with their degree, they come back with no student debt, they come back with skills, and a lot of them who go to foreign countries come back with language as well. So even those who go to Taiwan, many come back speaking Mandarin, which gives them an advantage. I also believe that young people have benefited in terms of employment. I was very happy that through my ministry, of course, I had 7 years, my colleagues didn't have but a year and a half or thereabouts. But through my ministries, I was able to employ quite a few young people in terms of getting them into diplomacy. I won't go into all the names, but some now are in New York, some are in Washington, D.C., some are in the office in St. Kitts, some are in Canada, and we're able to place young people in London and various places, young divisions, who had hitherto been denied the opportunity to work in diplomacy. So there are young people out there in Nevis and in the wider Federation, but more specifically Nevis, since you asked me how it would benefit Nevis, who are interested in diplomacy, who are interested in becoming ambassadors, working as diplomatic officers, not just in St. Kitts, but around the world, then certainly I believe that I have done my very best to empower young people. And there are several now who, as I say, are working. Even though I'm no longer there, they're continuing the good work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Well, sorry, I just was going to speak briefly about my ministry as well, that I was in charge of when I was at the federal government, the Ministry of Environment and Cooperatives. And of course, we are hoping, and I think we're very confident, that we will be back in government very shortly. And I want to say boldly that once I'm back at the government at the federal level, I will be eyeing that ministry that I was robbed of over a month ago. That's the Ministry of Environment and Cooperatives. And during that short space of time that I was the Minister of Environment and Cooperatives, I've become extremely passionate about the environment in particular. And, you know, it is strange because I've become so passionate about it, because I was so involved with what was happening in St. Kitts and in the Ministry of Environment and Cooperatives, I've developed a very special and strong bond with the staff in both departments. As a matter of fact, last week I journeyed over to St. Kitts. The Department of Cooperatives would have organized a function there, the agro strip, and they would have invited me, and they insisted that you need to come and show your face. And I am pleased to say that I was told that you are the only politician who showed up at the agro strip. No minister in the government showed up, and I showed up because I wanted to support. That is the kind of relationship that I have built with the team in St. Kitts at both the cooperatives and both environment. And I'm happy to say again that there was an open day that was held here in Nevis at Hicks Estate. There's a restoration project that is taking place at Hicks Estate, being led by a project which is being actually spearheaded by the Department of Environment on St. Kitts. And so they would have journeyed over, the entire Department of Environment and Cooperatives would have journeyed over to Nevis yesterday. And I'm sorry, they journeyed over here on Tuesday. And so they indicated to me that we'll be in Nevis and we would like to see you just pass by. And so when I was at the function, I was fortunate to be able to, given the opportunity to say a few brief remarks. And in my remarks, I said that I consider myself as a champion of the environment, a champion and an advocate. Irrespective of the fact that I do not lead that ministry anymore, I am still a champion and an advocate of the environment. There was another function that I was at again today at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park that was led by my Department of Youth in collaboration with an organization called Girls Care. And it was all about speaking about the environment, advocacy about the environment for females. And of course, they were very enthused as well that I was present to speak about the environment and to champion the cause of the environment. And so within that short space of time, I have developed a love for the environment, become very passionate, and so that is something I would love to be back in. In terms of its impact on young people, we would love to see much more young people getting involved in the environment. And I know you in particular, Naikisha, I have followed your progress over the years, and I know you have been very passionate about the environment as well. And so we would want to see much more young people, both in St. Kitts and Nevis, getting involved, because climate change is very real. It is something that is affecting all of us, including our young people. And if the young people really want a future and a good future, they need to start looking at the issue of climate change to see what they can do to address the situation. And so the environment is a particular area where a lot more young people can get involved. And it is something that is actually now giving some appeal to young persons.
Thank you. That was...
I suppose you would have heard from both of my colleagues, so that may have been enough, but I still have something to add. Well, of course, prior to being removed from our mandate, or our mandate taken away from us in St. Kitts at the federal level, I was the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, and of course Marine Resources. But agriculture, the Premier would have touched on some of the exploits that we would have had over on St. Kitts in agriculture. I am always proud to speak about agriculture because we have come a long way in recent times. And I believe since 2020, for example, when we would have been impacted by COVID-19, it brought into sharp focus the realities that we would have to face going into the future, in that we have to learn to feed ourselves. And I've brought that message since then up to today. And what pleases me and what really warms my heart is to see many more persons have become engaged in agriculture. You go on Facebook, for example, and you see persons are putting up pictures of their backyard, planting a lot of trees, a lot of fruit trees and various vegetable crops. And that is important because we have to understand that there will come a time again when we'll have to rely solely on our backyard to feed ourselves. That is from the smaller scale, but on a larger scale, I want to say to our young people that agriculture has become a major part of our economy. And people have to eat. There's no if, nor but, or maybe. Every day we have to eat, and we want to eat healthy, wholesome meals. What is most important at this point in time for our young people to consider is all of the new technologies that have been brought into the sector. Smart agriculture is what is being sold these days, and that is what most young people are gravitating to. The days of going into the open fields to till the soil at 12 o'clock in the day, hot sun, those days are pretty much, they're pretty much no longer with us, so to speak. What I'm seeing is that people are now gravitating to the technologies such as shade houses and greenhouses. And we have seen an increase in the numbers here on the island of Nevis and throughout the Federation. As a matter of fact, right now on the island of Nevis, I believe we have almost 30 greenhouses all around the island of Nevis. And that is phenomenal because in 2013, for example, I'll come to 2020, yes, but in 2013, perhaps there was just one or maybe half of a greenhouse here on the island of Nevis. And one of the mandates we had then, and one of the commitment we made, is that we will grow that technology to the point where we'll have at least 30 or more within a 5 to 7 year period. We're just about there. And I believe over the next 5 years, when we get a new mandate, for example, at the federal level, where we can have access to much more resources, because the resources are there. We have more access to those resources. It is my intention to grow even more and double the amount of greenhouses that we have here on Nevis and throughout the Federation. I do believe that come the next election, the people of Nevis 11 would repose that confidence in me to go back. And you asked previously, your question would have included the notion that there are various ministries that are available to us, which would be most important and desirable, and which would impact young people most. And I do believe agriculture is where I have the strength. And I've proven that there is strength and ambition there on my part to grow that sector and bring young people along with me. One of the industry or one of the sector or areas that I want to have significant impact over the next 5 years is the introduction of a broiler industry here in Nevis and in the Federation. Because what we do here in Nevis would impact the island of St. Kitts as well. You'd want to have the establishment of a broiler industry so as to supply fresh chicken to the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. We have done some groundwork, we have done some costing, and from what we have established thus far, it would cost just about $7 million to establish the facility, that is the processing facility. Just imagine we get our fair share that we have been clamoring about. A portion of that can be dedicated towards the establishment of that industry. We have already started in negotiation and in very advanced stages, that is, of procuring or securing lands for our poultry farmers to establish in the Indian Castle area or Webb's Estate area. We want our young people to focus on that because I do believe it is an area where employment could be generated. Of course, let's start by the fact that young persons would become entrepreneurs because you'll own your own business. You'll be able to employ persons. You'll have a revenue stream. You'll have your books, so you can sit and manage your own books, your input and your expenditure and your income, whether you're making a profit or a loss. And I do believe profits will be made because chicken is consumed daily. Thousands of pounds of chicken are consumed daily here on Nevis and throughout the Federation. As a matter of fact, just to give an indication as to how lucrative it can become. And let me say to young people before I talk about how much can be made, there's a lot of work involved. But that should not be a hindrance for our young people to get involved. And it is hard work, yes, but it can be fruitful work. And I do believe based on the numbers we're looking at in terms of the importation of chicken and chicken parts into the Federation, you're looking at in excess of $85 million over the last 5 years. That's a significant sum of money. Just think about it. If we can cut into that 10%, say annually, biannually, whatever the case might be, over a 5-year period, you're down to, let's say you're importing maybe about 60%. So we are supplying 40% here. That can translate into millions of dollars. And like I said before, it is not easy work, but it can be rewarding. And that is a sector, an industry that we believe we can place special emphasis. The policies that we're going to put in place to guide that particular sector will be beneficial to all. We know it can be difficult to establish such a business because you need a significant amount of capital to start. We're going to make it easy for our young men and young women to get involved. We're going to make the land available and we're going to offer the necessary concessions on the equipment and so forth. I don't want to go too deep into it, but it is something to prick the minds of our young people and get them ready for what is to come. Because moving forward, we want young people to be front and center in all aspects of development here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. While we're here in Nevis, we always have to start at home and say that we want our Nevisian youth to be involved in the development of this island. When Mark Brantly and I started, we were just on the we were just over that threshold of being called a youth. But I still felt young because we started around 38, 39, thereabout, if we were to look back at the years when we started. Yeah. So we were young, and we got involved in the politics, and we also got involved in areas of business. He's a lawyer, yes, but I consider myself a relatively successful businessman. Started a business, started more than one, was in the nightclub business as well too. So I have tried a few things as a young man. And I want to say to our young people, there's nothing wrong with trying. You can try and fail, but never you fail to try because the sky is the limit. We hear that all the time. And I want our young people to understand that nothing in this life is going to come easy. You have to be prepared to work. So agriculture is a tough area to be in. It's a difficult area, yes, but it is a rewarding area, and I want our young people to start thinking agriculture. Start thinking about feeding the nation. Start thinking about eliminating some of the importation of goods that come into the Federation, vegetable products or whatever the case might be. And agro-processing should form a major part of our future development because I have proffered to some young persons that perhaps you can get into a couple of acreage, planting a couple of acreage of hot pepper and start getting into the processing of hot sauce and also maybe even some sort of candies or something made of pepper, or mint, whatever the case might be. I mean, I am smiling about it because it seems exciting to me that we have now to start to think outside of the box and think about areas that we can exploit. It may not seem like everybody is into it, and maybe that's a good thing because when everybody cluster a particular area, the returns becomes less. So start thinking about something like planting hot peppers to process hot sauce and the likes. Beekeeping is an area that can be exploited, and those are the areas in the new dispensation we'll have to pay special attention, because honey is an expensive commodity now. I remember the days when we used to sell a small bottle for $5 back in the 80s, because I was once a beekeeper as well too. I've tried a lot of things, and that is why I'm talking this way this evening. In agriculture, because I used to sell my own lettuce and tomatoes and so forth. So it is all good and well for young people to try something new and something different. Do not always rely on what you see someone is doing and try to get into it as well. Be a trailblazer. Agriculture has many areas where persons can consider themselves trailblazers. And I want to commend our young people to start with, because there are some who have gone into the greenhouse technology and who have been successful and making money. But in making money, they're also feeding our people. And that is key to our survival into the future. If we are to have a sustainable future, a future that is bright in many ways, we have to learn to feed ourselves, because our future must not lie in the hands of someone in the foreign land. It must be in our hands here. And agriculture is certainly one of those areas that we can separate ourselves as young people. And I want to give the assurance that the support will be there from this administration, from the federal level. The support will always be given in livestock farming, crop farming, and also we sometimes don't speak a lot about fisheries, the fishery sector, but that also would receive tremendous support, which it has always gotten. And I want to commend all who have been pressing on in those regards, but we'll provide those added incentives as we go along.
This is some really exciting news, and I hope all young people are taking notes. Mr. Evelyn, there's a question here for you. What ideas do you have in mind to lower the carbon footprint of Nevis when you are elected again?
That's an excellent question, Keisha. And of course, once I'm elected again, the assumption is that we will be back in government. And the assumption is that I will retain or regain the Ministry of Environment and Cooperatives. And of course, we have always been looking at ways in which we can lower our carbon footprint, not only in Nevis, but in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I must say that when I attended COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland last year, I was very privileged to would have presented to the entire world our revised NDC, or nationally determined contributions, because all countries are supposed to be presenting their NDCs in terms of what they are doing individually in their countries to assist in this fight against climate change and to reduce the carbon footprint. And I must say that the NDC that was presented at COP26 by St. Kitts and Nevis, it was one that, brought a lot of accolades. I think people were very impressed with the presentation that we made. And a part of that NDC in terms of reducing our carbon footprint, because as I said, we have to do it in concert as a federation for both St. Kitts and Nevis. And of course, we all know here in Nevis, one of the big things that we have always been speaking about over the years is the idea of renewable energy. And of course, we know that we have been talking about geothermal now for years. And I am really hopeful. I think that we would have seen some good movements recently where geothermal is concerned. I know there are a lot of skeptics out there still, but I'm hopeful, I'm confident that very soon we will be able to see the geothermal project here on the island of Nevis moving forward. Of course, we know that we would have had the testing, the resources there. We understand that we have excellent resource for geothermal. And so the hope is that we can move the geothermal project forward. Of course, if over the years we would have been getting our fair share, the geothermal project probably would have been up and running long time. And so we are very hopeful that in the near future, with the movement that we have seen recently, that we could have our geothermal plant up and running. And of course, once we have that, a number of persons on Nevis would benefit, and we are hopeful that in future, St. Kitts can benefit as well. And so once we move to renewable energy, including geothermal, that is an excellent way in terms of reducing our carbon footprint. Of course, when I presented the NDC as well, I would have spoken at length about the solar farm that is due to be built on the island of St. Kitts. That, if once it is built, would be the largest in the Caribbean. And of course, that would assist as well with lowering our carbon footprint. And I must also say that apart from the solar farm that is built to be built on St. Kitts, we here in Nevis, I think there's an opportunity there as well for us to do more where solar energy is concerned. We live in a tropical island where the sun is always out, the sun is always bright, sun is always hot, and we need to capture that energy that the sun provides. And so we would be advocating for more households to get into solar energy and of course be able to actually lower their electricity bills. And if you're not able to power your entire property from solar, at least you should be able to power part of your property from solar. We have seen a few of our business places here on the island of Nevis doing some work with solar energy, and so that is something that I personally would like to see increased on the island of Nevis as well as on St. Kitts as well. And so these are excellent ways of going green, going renewable energy, and lowering our carbon footprint. Another project that we were trying to pursue, we have been trying to pursue in St. Kitts as well, St. Kitts and Nevis, is a little pilot in terms of electric vehicles. I know there was a particular project that was supposed to be funded by the government of Italy that was put on hold because of some changes in the administration, but we are still hopeful that that project could come on stream. We were supposed to get some electric school buses, and I'm hopeful that that could still happen and we could have that being piloted on both St. Kitts and Nevis. And after we start with the school buses, we are hopeful that persons can look forward to purchasing electric vehicles as well. And so these are areas that have a lot of potential in terms of lowering our carbon footprint.
That sounds really good. I see you all are ready, and there's no need to worry about being removed. We are sending you back to continue your good work. So young people, like I said, no need to worry. This next question includes one of the most talked about topics this season, the CBI program and the fair share. So we have these talks about fair share and CBI programs. How would the monies received be used to help uplift young people?
Well, you have heard reference to the fair share argument already from all of us this evening. And the truth is that the people of Nevis have been denied what is rightfully ours. We have been denied the opportunity to get the resources that we need. Development costs money. That's a simple fact. So a lot of times people say, well, how come we don't have better schools, we don't have better roads, we don't have better health care? It requires money to do that. And we know from the information that we've been able to unearth that the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis has earned in the last 12 or so years somewhere in the region of $5.3 billion from citizenship by investment. And of that, the people of Nevis have received a mere $400 million, roughly 7%, when we have almost 30% of the population. So it is important for us to understand that we are fighting not to deprive St. Kitts of anything, but for the citizens and young people in Nevis to be able to access their fair share. Now, what will we do with that? I think it allows us, for example, to implement some of the plans that we have had for some time and have not been able to implement because the resources have not been available. We have said, for example, that we want to separate the sixth form college from the Charlestown Secondary School and create a proper and first-class facility for advanced education in Nevis. In St. Kitts, of course, they have the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College. In fact, many of our young people attend CFBC in St. Kitts. We see no reason why we couldn't implement that right here in Nevis, offering our young people new skills, but making it convenient so that they could have it right here. And moving what we've had at the sixth form, which we think we've outgrown, and move into a state-of-the-art facility where our young people can have access to advanced education right here on the island. Imagine, for example, things like culinary arts, things like the creative arts, music, publishing, you know, all the graphic design that our young people are now into, all of that being made available here. We have ambitions to set up on Nevis a coding academy. And what is coding, don't ask me, but based on the research that I've had, it is a skill set that allows us to do things, to create apps, to build websites, to do video games, to do all of these things. And we've seen some countries, I mentioned Romania is an example, India is a good example, which these countries have risen, these countries have done well because the young people are so computer savvy, they have the skill sets to create all of these various apps that a lot of us use. We go to, what is it called on your iPhone when you go and you buy apps, I'm sure you will tell me, when you download these various apps.
Play Store?
No, we go to some shop and we download apps. I'm dating myself right now.
App Store.
App Store. That's it. Imagine all these young people here, nobody remember the App Store. Thank you, Eric Evelyn. So you go to the App Store.
I'm the Minister of Youth.
A Minister of Youth, that's right. So you have all of this that we can do. So we want to start a coding academy here. We want to look at how we can offer our young people more opportunities for training, to go abroad. So I spoke about scholarships earlier that I go and I ask for from foreign governments. But what if we had the resources that we could guarantee every young person who has the potential that there is a mechanism available for them to access funding to go and study and to prepare themselves for their future? It could be academics, it could be those who are interested in vocational skills. We would want to equip our TVET centers. Make sure that the one that is already constructed in Gingerland and the one to be constructed in Charlestown, that our young people have access to those skill sets. I look across, Nikesha, I see your fancy hairstyle. I look here, I see all the hairstyles that the young people here have. Unfortunately, Alexis doesn't have a hairstyle. He needs skills, he needs equipment, he said, to make his hair go away. But the truth is that all of these are skill sets. Nails, hair, beauty. These are all areas, I think, that we should be able to afford our young people who have that interest and opportunity. And then we talk about infrastructure, building out the infrastructure. We're in a situation now where oil prices are rising, and as a result, electricity prices are rising. Fuel surcharge, people are complaining understandably about it. And I think that that allows us the opportunity to engage with renewables, geothermal energy in particular, to reduce those costs. And more importantly, to insulate ourselves from future shocks, because oil prices are going to continue to go up and down depending on conditions around the world. Russia decided to invade Ukraine, had nothing to do with us, but we are paying the price in terms of increased oil prices, increased food prices, increased electricity costs. And so I think that there are a number of initiatives that we can do. We, for example, initiated, even during COVID, a $5 million fund for youth and women. And that the idea was to allow youth and women to access seed money, startup capital of up to $100,000. Now, a lot of people complain and say that wasn't a lot of money, and I understand that. But the idea really was to provide the capital to get you started. And so small businesses, or those who had a business idea, some came and they wanted 25,000, some came and they wanted 40,000, some came and they took the full 100,000. But what I was pleased about is that it is demonstrative of what we have already done and what we would intend to do. So imagine that we were able to get the monies that belong to us. And we can say it's now not $5 million, but $15 million or $20 million that is there for young people who want to start a business. The reason why we said young people and women, because those two groups were the two groups that had most difficulty accessing a loan at the bank. If you want to go to any commercial bank to borrow money to start a business, they want to know what your assets are. If you're 20 years old or you're 22 years old, what assets do you have? You have an idea. You might be a creative, but you don't have land, you don't have a house, you don't have assets that you can take and pledge to the bank. So you need a government, you need a facility that caters to you, understanding that the payback is long-term, and that if they're asking you for life insurance, health insurance, land title, and all of these things that you will never qualify. And so we think a lot of our young people are being locked out. And we would like to provide more than that $5 million. And we think that having access to our fair share of resources will allow us to do that. We have programs like STEP. The STEP program is not a bad program. The STEP program was actually designed to provide on-the-job training for youngsters and others. And the idea would be that when they work with an architectural firm or they work with a bakery for a year or 2 years, the government or through STEP pays, and then they get the skills that the employer can then employ them because they're now a trained person. So some employers may not be willing to take somebody who doesn't have any skills. So we said we'll pay for that, and then later the employer can take them on. We would be able to have our own version of that STEP program. Currently the problem we have is, the situation we have is untenable. We're in Bastille, they're deciding who gets on the program, who doesn't get on the program, where they're telling us the programs are closed, but people in St. Kitts are being added. We must be able to control those programs. Eric is here. Social programs. When we saw what happened during COVID, and a lot of the people who suffered were again women and youth. They were the ones who were out of work. They were the ones who were suffering. And we had to fashion social safety nets to ensure that our people did not have the extreme difficulty. We had difficulty, but we want to cushion as much as possible. Again, having access to the resources. That we could say to our people, listen, don't worry. Fuel surcharge. A lot of young people out there, just like a lot of adults, are suffering in terms of fuel surcharge. Do you know in St. Kitts, they have insulation from the fuel surcharge over there? Why? CBI. The Citizenship by Investment money is being used to subsidize the fuel surcharge on St. Kitts. Nevis doesn't have that luxury because, again, we have not been able to receive what belongs to us. And so the position of fair share is for us very simple. Give the people of Nevis what belongs to them and allow us to fashion programs over here that will generate the type of development that we know Nevis can achieve.
And if I could also add as well, I know we can sit here all night and we can reel out all of the programs that we have in mind, all of the infrastructural projects, all of the programs, but I just wanted to touch on the area of sports because there's so much that can be done. Mm-hmm. And of course, our sporting programs are geared to young people as well. Just this afternoon, we were able to reopen the Sisley Grell Hall Doris Stevens Netball Complex.
And it looks magnificent.
And it looks fabulous and fantastic.
Absolutely.
And the stark reality is that these initiatives cost a lot of money. And you know, strange enough, when we finished that ceremony this afternoon, my permanent secretary came up to me, Mr. Glasgow, and he said, Mr. Evelyn, the amount of money we had to spend on this place, we are only halfway through the year, and our vote for enhancement of sporting facilities is practically done. And so it comes back to the point of if we are getting our fair share of the CBI funds, there's so much that we can do because that facility is practically almost looking brand new. And I really want to take this opportunity here again to commend my colleague, Minister Brand, because it was my ministry and his Ministry of Communications that came together, partnered, collaborated to ensure that we have such a spanking new facility for our young people, our netballers. Because we had 4 teams here this afternoon, and trust me, it is a lot of young persons from high school age and up, and they are going to be benefiting from that. But apart from netball, there's so much more things that we can do with our sporting facilities on the island of Nevis. We have the Mondo track. Of course, the first phase is complete, and we have seen excellent results from that.
Of course.
If we get our fair share, if we get what is rightfully ours, there's work to do at the Mondo track. There's work to do on the other sporting facilities, because I made a pledge, I made a commitment when I became the Minister of Sports in 2017 that all sporting facilities on the island will get bathroom facilities at least. Of course, right now we are doing a lighting project retrofitting the lights and making sure that all of the playing fields on the island have lights. It's costing money. And so we have used for the money that we are being robbed of. And so I just wanted to touch briefly, because as I said, the Premier would have spoken quite a bit on some of the things that we wanted to do, but I just wanted to touch briefly on the area of sports. And of course, that would impact a lot of the young persons.
Well, I must chime in as well too, because both of my colleagues have touched on a number of areas that they would want to pursue once we were to get our fair share. And I want our young people to understand and gravitate to this issue, because there are a lot of things being said out there by the other side that is, and they're seeking to perhaps confuse the issues. We have been saying that the island of Nevis must receive what is rightfully ours. And fair share means that we should get that percentage of the CBI returns that are due to us by law. And so we are saying that if we were to get our fair share, the Premier has articulated quite a number of areas, infrastructural, training, and so forth. One of the areas that I am very much interested in pursuing further is the area of housing, in terms of providing housing for young people. Back in 2016, we would have borrowed $25 million from the Social Security Board, and we were able to construct just about 80 plus houses for our young people. Majority of our young people were able to gain access to housing. And what we did, we fashioned a package whereby young persons or anyone can come in and pay as little as $5,000 down payment on that house, and up to $10,000 based on the cost and the size of the house. And then the loan arrangement or the mortgage arrangement was handled by the Nevis Cooperative Credit Union. 5% was the interest charge. That was fixed at 5%. No one right now who would have accessed that particular scheme that we had is paying anything more than $1,200 per month. So you have persons paying between $900 to $1,200 per month. That is for the affordable income scheme that we had. We also had a program that was geared towards young persons who would have gone abroad and have been back for at least 5 years or more and wanted to have a home of their own. Because you know, when you come back to Nevis, you have that student loan to pay, and the Premier would have indicated that someone paid off after 20 years. And during that time, it is difficult to access housing. So we decided to put a package together as well for young men and young women who returned to Nevis and wanted to stay home and also contribute to the development of the island of Nevis. We said there was a particular price range that we would have put together in terms of a house valued at about $350,000, but the payment per month did not exceed $1,500. So persons were able to access that. There's an area that we would have carved out in the Garners area. That's over in St. James, which is called University Heights. We want to continue that program, and that is why we would have gone about negotiating for another 36 acres of land in the immediate area where we'll carve out again an additional space for persons to benefit from that going into the future. But why housing is important? Housing is important because, of course, we're pursuing solid communities throughout the island of Nevis. Communities where we can raise our children. Communities where persons can live together in a harmonious way. And that will be done to the benefit of the island of Nevis, in that you have strong communities throughout Nevis where persons are building their communities in Brownhill, in Prospect, in St. James, somewhere down in Hanley's Road, in St. Thomas's, for example. We are going to carve out those areas so that our young people can, most of all, stay in the area in which they were born, to start with, if we can, but also stay in the island of Nevis, because once you live here, you contribute here, you contribute to Social Security, you contribute to the business sector, you yourself contribute to the financial requirements of your own children. Once you're working here and living here, we understand what the multiplier effect of the income that you generate can do here on the island of Nevis. So we have done that, and I want to say this, I want to encourage our young people to get involved in those skilled areas like plumbing, being an electrician, Painting is a business and it's a skill.
Tiling.
Tiling, and even being a contractor. You have to start somewhere, but if you eventually gain those skills, you can become a contractor right here on the island of Nevis and employ people. You realize we're looking at building our young people to the point where they can take over from those who will eventually exit the stage, because no one will be around forever. So we want that continuity in our island. And construction is an area that can certainly realize a lot of returns, because construction right now, as it is booming here on the island of Nevis, and it is going to be that way for the foreseeable future. So housing is important. There are other things being proffered by other persons, like rent to own. I want Nevision to start thinking about owning at least 5,000 square feet of this rock. Before you start talking about rent to own, you have to start thinking about, how can I own a piece of the rock to build a house or to own a home and have a backyard to plant something? Because rent to own, you own your parking spot. And perhaps sometime you come home in the night, you can't even get into the parking spot that you should get into. That is the spot you own. But I want people to think about owning a piece of the rock, and we are going to put a lot of emphasis on housing moving forward with the fair share that we'll get. Premier, I'm asking you for $25 million when the time comes, so we can duplicate that program that we did then. We borrowed the money. This time, if we get our fair share, we can use that and perhaps bring the payment down, or the payments down a little further, so that persons can have access. The more people owning houses, the more property taxes are paid, the more construction that is going to take place, the more for maintenance, and the more persons will be happily engaged in the development of the island. So there are a lot of positives to be had from the housing sector, and I want to lead that charge. I've already said to the Premier I need $25 million at least when the first check comes to pursue that. And we're making that commitment to our young people this evening, that housing will be a major part of our infrastructural development going forward as well.
Well, I'm glad you all talked about the loans that young people can get and the plans for sports, because those two topics I would have definitely covered tonight. Now we hear many crying out, and we all know these are hard times, especially with what we went through during COVID. So with the rising price in food and gas, what is your administration's plan to assist the young people and people in general in both the private and public sector who are barely making ends meet?
Well, let me try and tackle that, because that's an extremely difficult question. We see major countries around the world, and I use the United States as an example, the most powerful and the richest country in the world, struggling to cope with these very issues. And you reflect for a moment and say, if the great United States cannot control inflation, cannot control the cost, the rising cost of fuel, cannot control the rising cost of food, how can Nevis achieve that? It is very difficult. And I've always believed in the type of leadership that seeks to be honest with our people. And I would be dishonest tonight if I said that we had a plan to reduce prices of electricity or prices of fuel or prices of food, because so much of that is outside our control. We, for example, took advice from our technocrats in the Ministry of Finance, and they said to us, listen, food prices are rising, and therefore the government should take away all duties, all taxes on the importation of food. And I made a speech and I said, we are going to do exactly that to try and provide some relief. We said to our supermarkets, we want you to pass on the savings. And I had a meeting with the three main supermarkets here on the island, Value Mart, Rams, and Best Buy. And they said to me something that was quite sobering. They said, Premier, we thank you for trying, but what you're doing will not make a difference to price. And I said, what do you mean? They said it won't make a difference because every week or 2 weeks that they order from the States, the prices go up. And they keep going up. The price not only for the food, because there are production shortages, but the price of the shipping as well. And so we have to grapple with this idea that what we can do is extremely limited. We don't produce diesel here, we don't produce oil we don't produce fuel. And so we have now, I think, to look inwards and to say as individuals, as homes, homeowners, as communities, what can we do? And one of the things that we can do, it may sound odd, but I suggested it up to this morning, is young people especially may take the lead. Instead of all of us coming here in our own vehicle, can we carpool and use one vehicle? There are some families in Nevis that have 3, 4 people in the house, and each one of them has a vehicle. Each one of them works in town, and they drive 4 vehicles to work, to get to work and back. Can we get to a stage where we said, you know what, let's leave 2 or 3 of those vehicles parked up and drive in a single vehicle? Can we get to a stage where we go around the house, as I do at my house, and turn off lights that don't need to be on? It may sound simple, but if enough of us do it. Just now we're having a drought that's happening in Nevis. And what have we been doing? We've been saying to our people to control and conserve the use of water. So we say, don't water your lawn, don't wash your car. Similarly, if gas prices are going up, we should be encouraging our people to drive less.
Yes.
Nevis is actually small enough that a lot of us can lose some weight, like myself. I need to lose some by walking a bit more. And so if you're just going up the road to see a friend, rather than jumping in the car and driving, you can probably leave the car and walk. This may sound simplistic, but I think these are some of the things that we now need to do, to look at our own habits. If it is you're running the AC at home all day, all night, try taking it off for some period of the day and see how that impacts your electricity bill. In terms of food, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers has led, in my view, a revolution in terms of food and food security here. He spoke of the fact that we didn't have any shade houses, so to speak, in 2013. We now have, he suggested, about 30. New technology, more production. One of the best ways, in my view, to insulate ourselves from exogenous shocks dealing with food and food prices is for us to grow more food locally. If we're growing more food locally, we are producing what we eat. It allows us to insulate ourselves to some degree from the shocks that we're seeing outside, where imported food, according to our supermarkets, is increasing in cost every single week that they have to order. I believe that the solutions for us right now lead us back in our history in terms of what we used to do. Where we used to grow more of what we ate. We know what that is because that's healthy. It isn't full of chemicals. It isn't full of all kinds of hormones. And that is why I'm pleased to hear some of the things that we're talking about, the broiler industry, growing our own chicken, and saying to our people that agriculture and feeding ourselves is a viable way out of facing steeper and steeper prices at the supermarket. So you asked about a plan. I think it is difficult for a small government like ours, without the necessary resources, to put in place a plan that will impact the cost of fuel globally, to impact the cost of food globally. And the only way we can combat this is to change behaviors, on the one hand, and also to grow more of what we eat. I'm going to touch on fair share just for half a minute, to also say this, that the same way that in St. Kitts, the citizenship by investment proceeds are being used to subsidize and cushion the impact of the fuel surcharge on our brothers and sisters in St. Kitts, on young people in St. Kitts, we should have the same access to those resources to do the same here in Nevis. And that is why when we say we want access to what belongs to us, it is to allow us to do those types of programs where we can cushion, at least for some period of time, the impact of those rising costs and escalating costs that we're seeing globally. So I wish I had a silver bullet. I wish I had a grand plan to tell you about. The truth is that in these times, even great nations with vast resources are struggling to control what has become a global problem in terms of production, transportation, and rising fuel costs.
I just wanted to add as well, I wanted to endorse all of what Mark said. And I just wanted to add as well, you know, a lot of the times we look to the government for all of the answers. But the government do not have all of the answers at all the times. And there are times when we as individuals, we need to be able to make certain decisions as well. We need to be creative in what we do, even at the household level, in order for us to, we have all seen what has happened with the rise in prices, not only in terms of food, but even in terms of building material. I mean, some of the building material have gone up twofold in terms of the price. And so everything has gone sky high, and Mark is correct. I mean, in terms of the shipping is what is really killing us. And there's absolutely nothing we can do. But as individuals and as householders, there are a lot of things that we can do differently in order for us to make an impact in terms of cutting back on what we do. Mark spoke about carpooling. And I know this is something that people in some of the big countries actually do. They leave their cars at home and they carpool. I know there's some countries that they do it like, persons do it like once per week or maybe twice per week. I mean, a lot of the times here in Nevis, some households have 3, 4, 5 vehicles. And maybe on a Friday, we can decide, well, we'll use one vehicle for today. You know, and that is one way of cutting back on gas prices. Mark spoke about agriculture as well. That is something that we have to get creative with. I come from an agriculture background, and there's so much things that we can do in terms of planting more of what we eat. We need to utilize more space in our backyard, in our front yard. And there's times when people say, well, listen, my soil is not good, I don't have enough space. Here again, become creative. There are containers out there. All of the time that you buy these big bottles of water, you can cut those bottles off and plant in them. You can get old tires. You know, you can get grow boxes. You can get flower pots. You can plant your crops right on your porch, whether it's on the front porch or in the back porch. You know, and it's amazing sometimes the crops that you can actually get from planting in these containers. And that is an excellent way of cutting back on your bill in the supermarket. I know only recently the Department of Agriculture here in Nevis, they were giving away seedlings. And they have been doing that since the pandemic. They've been giving away seedlings, they've been giving away seeds for farmers and backyard gardeners. And people need to take advantage of these things when they come up. And at least you take advantage, you do your own planting, and it's amazing how much you can generate and you can actually sell sometimes. But we as individuals, we need to get creative. And as I said, there's so much that a small government can do. We need to do a lot of things to help ourselves and to try our best to see how we can do or what we can do in terms of cutting down on our costs, cutting down on how many times you go to the supermarket, how many times you go to the restaurant to buy lunch or buy dinner. And we just need to cut and contrive, as the old people would say.
If I were to make just one small point, because the Premier would have done justice to the question to some extent, but I do believe it is about time that as a federal government we need to look at the VAT that we are currently paying of 17%. I do believe with the amount of money we're hearing that the CBI program would pull in on an annual basis, and over the last, let's say, 10 years, I think some consideration has to be made at some point about the percentage, for example. We're thinking about bringing relief to poor people. Sometimes when we talk as politicians, we talk about poor people, but what are we doing to help poor people? That is one of the ways that I do believe that we can certainly impact the persons who are out there struggling, even if it's for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, or 6 months. Seeing which way we can bring some relief in that regard, because in December, when we have those 2 days of VAT relief, you see what happens. The sales go through the roof. I'm not saying that every day you're going to have a sale, but at least every day when you go to the supermarket or to the groceries or wherever, at least you'll understand that you should be paying something less. And now you talk about the increase of shipping costs and the likes. How can we do something to impact our struggling families? And I believe it is at 17% now. Why can't we do 10% for the next 6 months? I mean, I'm just putting that forward because I, as a politician, and seeking to bring relief to the people I represent, that would be my thinking. And I believe at the federal level, we need to start thinking along those lines, since we are doing so well from this CBI program. I believe even here in Nevis, we have done some things in terms of removing VAT from some food items. I want us to go further and see in which way we can bring some additional relief. So I just wanted to make that point for consideration. This is not for me to implement. It is for us as a collective unit from the federal level, once we're there in government, to understand that people are struggling, and that might be an area that we can consider going into the future. That percentage has to be looked at.
Thank you. The next few questions are related to education, but all ministers can give input if you wish to. We are looking for a sustainable strategic plan on youth empowerment here. On youth empowerment, Mr. Brantley, you started talking about scholarships earlier, but I do have some questions that the young people need a little more information about. So here are the questions. How can young people, what exactly do the young people need to do to access scholarship funding assistance when going abroad to study?
Well, this may sound strange, but I think the first thing that young people need to do is pay attention. Because too many of our young people tell me they don't know. They didn't hear about that. They didn't realize. They need to pay attention. Listen, I have an open day that I instituted since I entered government. And this is a broader comment that I'm going to make. I see more people, for example, who cannot speak English coming to see me one-on-one. Sometimes I'm really struggling. 1, 2 words in Spanish, 1, 2 words in English to try and figure out. I hardly see Nevisians, and I hardly see young people. When I tell people, well, I have this open day, why don't, oh, I never hear about that, and I've been doing it for years. It's on the radio. Sometimes I wonder where young people get their information. Because so many of them tell me I didn't know about the scholarships. Oh, if I only knew, I would have done this if I only knew. So my best advice right now, young people, pay attention. Because too many times we say we don't know and we lose opportunities as a result. We have been trying, for example, through what I refer to as a scholarship desk at the Human Resources Department here, to disseminate information. And the information comes out. I try my best on social media, but I understand at my age, young people are not attracted to my page. That's fine. But social media is a good avenue. We have tried to disseminate the information widely using various media to allow our people, because that's what it first comes to. So, information, what is available. Only when you know what is available, you say, okay, how can I access? And then, of course, all these scholarship opportunities come with deadlines. So that's a big part of the problem. That a lot of times they say, well, I didn't have enough time. So we need to start by finding a better way and to say to our people to pay attention to what is happening. Pay attention to the bulletins. Some people tell you they don't listen to radio. I spoke to a lady recently, and the lady said, Mr. Brantley, I just go to work and come home. I don't have any friends. I don't listen to radio. I don't pay attention to phone. I don't watch TV. And I said, well, how are you going to know what's going on? So we really need to pay attention. I think our young people need to be informed. They need to be advocates. They need to... Nikesha sees something and she said, oh, I have a friend who wants to do culinary arts. There's something available. Send it in your chat groups. Not just about the outfit at music festival, but information that could advance us. What scholarships are available? What training opportunities are available? What loans are available? What grants are available? And that is for me very significant because I get that complaint all the time, say we don't know. So I would say the start is to get better information. And I would be, really grateful if I heard from young people as to how we can do better. Because too often I lament. And I give you an example. I sat with the foreign minister of Morocco. And I said to him, we need training, we need scholarship opportunities. I was so pleased when the man said we're going to make 20 scholarships available to you. 20. Now, could you imagine if even 10 youngsters from Nevis took that opportunity? A year and a half, 2 years later, I met with him again, and he said to me, I thought you said you needed training and you needed scholarships. I said, yes. He said, well, how come not even one person has come? So, for 2-3 years running, we had 20 scholarships available in Morocco. We couldn't get one person to go. Because people came back and they said, well, that's too far. Me now go to Africa. Morocco is closer to Europe than it is to most of Africa. Because Morocco is in the extreme north of Africa. But again, information. And information also about not only what's available, but informing ourselves. I met a youngster from St. Kitts in Rome, in Italy. And he's there doing a master's degree in tourism. And I was so impressed with him. I said, how did you get here? And he said he went online, he did his own research, and he applied for a scholarship, and he got through. And he's in Rome studying. I was in Serbia, in Belgrade, and I met a young lady there. And I was so impressed. From St. Kitts, studying in Belgrade. You go to Taiwan, we're there. You go to Cuba, we're there. I just feel that we need the information, yes, but in addition to needing the information, our young people need to be willing to take that chance. I see too many youngsters saying, listen, I don't want to go to these places, so I'm going to let my parents put their house up, put their land up, put their lives up to borrow money because I want to go UVI, because I know people in St. Thomas. I want to go to Midwestern because I know my friends gone Midwestern. But your friend's pocket might not be your pocket. And your friend's parents might have money where your parents don't. So I'm saying to our young people, take the chance. The world is a beautiful place to experience. The world is much more than Nevis, St. Kitts, the Caribbean, or New York. The world is a fantastic place. And the idea of going someplace to study where you get access to a new culture, access to a new language, and access to the skills that you acquire, that type of education goes well beyond the degree that you get. You come back with a wealth of experience in terms of how the outer world functions that you can then put to work here. And so I encourage our young people to put themselves in the way to find out what is going on. Put themselves in the way to access. And I'm going to make one last point in a broader context. I don't want to prolong it unnecessarily. But it goes to sometimes an attitude that we get from our own people of being too laid back. We sit back and then we say, oh, nothing is happening for me, and this isn't going on, and that isn't going on. A young man approached me the other day and said he can't find work. And I said, where are you from? He said he's from Nevis. You speak English perfectly. Why is it you can't find work? He don't know nothing going on. I said, well, you know something? I know a Spanish guy who don't speak one lick of English. He got 3 jobs. How we manage? He said, oh, well, maybe he lucky. Or he knows somebody. I said, no. He's out there every day looking. He's putting himself in the way for the opportunities that exist here. If you sit back, if you don't go out and be aggressive and proactive, and you want to this, you want it, you go out and you find it. You go out and you do, like this youngster from St. Kitts, go online and say, listen, I want to study. Italy offers me something, I'm going to apply in Rome. Boom, he's in Rome. I don't know if he's going to come back a Roman, but he's in Rome. Right? So the point that I'm seeking to make is that we need ourselves. We're talking about personal responsibility a lot. The opportunities are there. We have sought to make them available. But when we do that, and then our people do not take advantage of them, I get the response that I got from Morocco, you all are not serious because you told me you needed this and I give it to you and you don't use it. So I think that we need to get engaged, we need to inform ourselves, and we need to be aggressive in terms of opportunities.
I just wanted to quickly add, I think the Premier would have really expounded very well on this, but I wanted to also encourage our young people, and not only the young people, I want to encourage the parents as well, the parents and the guardians, because sometimes our young people need a little guidance as well, you need a little push. Because Mark is correct that a lot of our young people, they are a little bit laid back and not aggressive enough. And we have to recognize that the world is now a global village and nowhere is too far. There are some persons who say they don't want to go to Taiwan. Taiwan is too far. You know, as Mark indicated, you get a new culture, you're able to learn a new language. I just want to just quickly use this one example. I could remember when I was the permanent secretary about agriculture. We were pushing this training in Earth University, and we were encouraging persons to go to Earth University. Mm-hmm. And when persons came to my office to ask about the Earth University scholarship, I told them, at the moment they came to my office, I said, listen, I'm going to be open and honest with you. It's going to be taught in Spanish. It will be taught in Spanish. I don't want you to go and then you're shocked. It will be taught in Spanish, so you have to go and you have to spend a year learning the language. Some person got turned off. There was one young man in particular from Gingerland. His name is Leron Webb. And I remember when Leron came to my office, and when I told him, you'll have to learn Spanish, he said, I don't think I want to go. I told him, listen, young man, I wish that I knew the Spanish language well. Because I remember when myself and Alexis went to Earth University, we struggled because none of us could speak English.
Speak Spanish, you mean?
Spanish, you know? And none of us could speak Spanish. And our driver could speak strictly Spanish. He didn't speak any English. You know? So I told her, listen, it is important that you learn Spanish. Spanish is a universal language. And when you learn Spanish, you can communicate with anybody, anywhere in the world. I've gone to numerous training and programs and seminars, and some of them are in Spanish. And he said, all right, I'm going to take up the challenge and I'm going to go. He couldn't speak any Spanish. And I am proud to say that he took up the challenge, and when he graduated as one of the top students, just because of a little encouragement that I gave him. So I want to encourage the parents and the guardians and teachers as well. Encourage the students. Sometimes they need a little push, they need a little encouragement, and they need to get a little bit more aggressive and if scholarships are available, there's no need for you to go to the Development Bank or National Bank or any other bank to borrow $50,000, $60,000 when you get a free education.
If I might just add, because both of my colleagues have really expounded on the question well. I want to say, though, that I want our young people to be more strategic in their selection of their career path and selection of their course of studies. And why I say that? We have had this scholarship open to anyone in Nevis who wants to go away and study to be an engineer at UWI, for example, because we want to have that type of skill set at NEVLEC. And the Premier might correct me, but I don't think anyone has taken up that offer. So engineers are needed. Let me give you an example. In St. Lucia, Luslec, the electricity company there, you have engineers in all areas in that company. Because years ago, the emphasis was placed on getting St. Lucians to go abroad to study engineering so that they can come back and build that company. We have taken a similar stance, but persons are not taking up the offer. We need electrical engineers, we need mechanical engineers, we need IT specialists. I believe we would have gotten some scholarships to India to study IT, Premier. Mm-hmm. But these are the areas that young people should be pursuing. Why? These are serious investment in yourself. And even if you're not working here on Nevis, you would have that skill set to not study, but working here on the island of Nevis. You'd have had that skill set. You'd have made that investment so you can go to any neighboring island and contribute in some way. Not only contribute, but also you'll be able to contribute there, but still contribute back home, because remittances will be sent back home. You can still buy property here. So when you return to Nevis, you have your own home, you have your own property that you can go into. So there are some gains to be had, but I want our young men and young women to understand that business administration is not going to cut it. There are some degrees that persons just go into those areas because it's easy, and in 4 years you're back and you get a government job. But in terms of you advancing yourself, you have to go into the areas where the skills are needed. High voltage or heavy voltage, whatever you call it, those areas in electricity. And also, I did mention before that, of course, construction technology is also important. So there are a lot of areas that you can sit down with the right person, or guidance counselors, for example, can make that type of intervention at an early stage to make sure that you can guide our school children into the right direction. But we need to have the necessary skill sets here on the island so that at least Nevis can develop in a way that will make us a first world country. We can be just as good as any and better than many right here on the island of Nevis. And that is the message that I want to bring to our young people, that the right pathway is important in terms of selecting the right area of study so that you can gain those necessary skills to advance yourself and advance the island of Nevis.
So young people, you have heard them for yourself. Please take advantage. There's a question here. What would be done to accommodate youth work-wise? A lot of youths are coming out of sixth form, struggling to get jobs, and they have the required subjects. What is going to be put in place for the youths? PEP is always suggested, but it isn't the answer for everything. And as youths with subjects, the pay PEP gives is somewhat below what they worked so hard for and rightfully deserve.
In terms of jobs and youth, it is a perennial problem because each year, as you say, young people are coming out of school. Their parents are telling them it's time for you to go and find work. I've been supporting you now for 17 years, 18 years. You need to find something to do. And of course, the government can only absorb so many. So we have an obligation, I think, to create the environment where we can grow the economy. The only way that we can keep up in terms of providing jobs and opportunities is to grow the economy. To make sure that we have enough businesses that are opening, enough industry, enough enterprise, that young people can fit into something. But you said something in terms of the question about people coming out with subjects. And subjects are important. But in my own experience, as important as subjects are, your attitude, your willingness to work, your willingness to learn, to go on a job and acquire new skills and new skill sets, I think all of those are just as important. And a lot of times, I have had the occasion, for example, to recommend some young people for interviews at certain commercial institutions here in Nevis. And they come back and they say, well, you know, they have 6 subjects, they have 8 subjects, but I was a little disappointed because they were lackluster, they showed up late, they didn't dress the part. So I think that, again, taking that personal responsibility is going to be important. It is not just about saying I have a number of subjects, it is also about the attitude that you bring, the willingness to work that you bring, that stick-to-itiveness that is necessary to succeed in getting a job, but also in keeping that job and in advancing. We need to grow the economy, and that is why during COVID we had, as I mentioned, this $5 million fund. $5 million doesn't go as far as we would like it, so we would like to have more. We would like to provide those opportunities for young people to start their own business. That too is something that I keep preaching, not only to young people, but to our people. It is not always about finding a job. Sometimes it's about creating something. You might be a good chef, you might be a brilliant cake maker, brilliant baker. You might be great at doing hair or nails. You don't always have to go and ask somebody, could you hire me? If you have a skill set that you can translate into money. And so we need, I think, our people to start to think about, listen, not just coming and looking a job, but sometimes, do I have a skill? And that is what we were seeking to do in terms of seed money, to encourage those people who had an idea to translate that idea into a business. Because I think we need all those strands. As somebody said to me, every mom and pop shop, every small business is one less person looking for a job because you have something. It might be that you're great in terms of music, you're a great DJ, you're whatever, you're a great graphic designer. Whatever it is, I think our people need to follow their heart, access the skill sets, but we need the environment to create more jobs. So what have we been doing in terms of jobs? We, for example, have sought to create a movie industry out of nothing here in Nevis. In the height of COVID, we've already filmed 6 movies. In fact, it warmed my heart, I shared it with my colleagues, that I got a WhatsApp message from a friend of mine in Atlanta who said that 2 relatives of hers were flying to Las Vegas and they watched A Week in Paradise.
On United?
On Delta.
Delta, okay.
Delta, A Week in Paradise, showing. And I said, imagine that. Nevis, on a Delta flight from Atlanta to Las Vegas, and these individuals who are connected to Nevis decided they're going to watch that. Done here, during COVID, under this government. As I said, something created out of nothing. We now have, by the last tally I'm told, over 50 youngsters here who are involved in the movie business. Youngsters who are learning about lighting, about makeup, about wardrobe. And I think that those are the skill sets that can then take them elsewhere. We are trying to build out that industry. We have some big plans that we're working on that we hope will assist us in moving that industry forward. A different way to create jobs here. We have sought to grow the financial services industry. We now have not one, not two, three international banks operating on Nevis, and more to come. And so again, that's a sector that we feel young people should look to. Those who are interested in finance, in business, in banking, that provides some opportunity. Minister Jeffers has been talking about agriculture. And I know a lot of people, the attitude towards agriculture is, oh, well, that's hard work. And he mentioned hard work as well. But there's also the reward that comes from it. The reward of earning a living, the reward of supporting yourself and your family, but also the reward of feeding Nevis and making us self-sufficient. These are just some small areas in my view. Small business development, other industries like the movie industry, the financial services sector. Tourism, of course, is always part of our DNA, part of our business. But I believe that we need to sometimes think a little outside the box and not just say, well, I'm sitting home and I can't get a job in government, because the government simply cannot absorb everyone. But we have an obligation to grow this economy, and that is what we're seeking to do each day, to grow this economy, to get more development. I am so pleased, for example, that construction right now is booming on the island of Nevis. Absolutely booming. The last numbers we got from planning suggest that we had 166 active construction sites on Nevis at the moment. That, I think, is simply phenomenal. Construction may not be for everyone. But again, developing the skill sets, and that's why the TVET education is so important, because not always you have 10 subjects. It is that you can do electrical, or you can do plumbing, or you can do tiling, and you come out and you start making money right away. In fact, you might well be making more money than the individual with the 10 subjects, because you have a skill that is in demand and a skill that people are prepared to pay for. So we need to marry the two, and we need to continue to work hard, the government, to create the environment where jobs are created and the economy is growing. I believe in Nevis we're doing fairly well post-pandemic. In 2019, April, we registered the highest number of jobs in the history of Nevis at Social Security. By a year later, when the pandemic had hit, we had lost close to 1,000 of those jobs. And I'm pleased to say that we're slowly recovering. On the last numbers we saw, our jobs were actually recovering faster than our sisters in kits, for example. Our wages were growing faster than our sisters in kits. Our number of employees was growing faster than our sisters in kits. And so we feel that we're on the right track in terms of getting back to where we need to be in terms of job creation.
I definitely agree with everything you're saying. So we as young people just need to get creative, because they are willing to get us where we are. Mr. Evelyn, I know you are passionate about culture, and even before you were elected. I want you to tell us what the administration's plans are for our young people in regards to education and culture.
Thank you very much. Well, of course, you are totally correct. I am very passionate about culture. And of course, since I've taken over the Ministry of Culture, there has been a lot of movement where culture is concerned. I believe that I can boldly state that since I would have taken over the Ministry of Culture, that we have seen improvements in our cultural festival, our main festival, Culturama. We have seen the construction of the David Freeman Center of Excellence. Excellent. Of course, that is as the name suggests, it's a center of excellence, because it was built there for us to promote our culture. And since that facility has been built, apart from the fact that we can decentralize some of the activities that normally happen in Charlestown, and every time I speak about this, my colleague Minister Brand gets a little angsty. He said, you can't take everything out of Charlestown, but at the same time, we can't keep everything in Charlestown either. We have to decentralize. But apart from decentralizing, the center is there, the David Freeman Center is there, and of course we also have the facilities in Charlestown as well, to teach our young people, because we want to ensure that some of these cultural art forms continue to live on. And I am proud to state that since the David Freeman Center of Excellence have been built, and of course that is one of the reasons why it was built, to teach, we have been able to have lessons there in terms of pipe blowing, lessons there in terms of playing some of the instrument in the string band, lessons in masquerade dancing. We have also done on a yearly basis before COVID, we would have had workshops in costume designing, because we know costume designing is a big thing. And we are hopeful that in Nevis we could develop persons who can actually design costumes on Nevis. So when you have Culturama, we don't have to always be bringing in someone to design our costumes, because we actually have to bring people in most of the times from Antigua, from Trinidad, to design costumes. So we have a strategic plan in terms of teaching persons various art forms, costume designing. As I said, we have been teaching people at the David Freeman Center of the different art forms, because we have to recognize that this is our culture. And I think a lot of the times we here in Nevis, we don't appreciate what we do. But when we go outside, when we travel out, we recognize how much the people outside value and love our culture. When I traveled to Trinidad for Carry Festa a couple of years ago, and I was fortunate to be the head of the delegation at that time for the Federation, we had a contingent here as a part of the delegation to Carry Festa, a contingent of masquerade dancers from Nevis, the masquerade dancers and the musicians who were from Nevis. And trust me, every time they performed in Trinidad, I would say locally they turn up the place. I'm serious. Our masquerade dancers and the drummers were the most impressive at Carry Festa in Trinidad. And I say that with no water in my mouth. They were the most impressive. Our masquerade dancers, our musicians have gone to Dubai. They have done well there as well. And so we have to continue to ensure that these art forms live on. They are taught to our young people. We've had some programs in our schools. The NCDF run programs in our schools with the different art forms. We have programs in our schools to teach steel pan music, to teach drumming, to teach the string instruments, to teach different dances and so on. And so we have to continue to strengthen those programs that we have at NCDF, the programs that we have in the schools, programs that we do at the David Freeman Center of Excellence. And I believe that our culture will be in good hands, because a lot of young persons are actually getting involved. I remember last year when we had the virtual festival, Virtual Culturama, for the very first time, which was hosted at the David Freeman Center of Excellence again, which I'm proud of. We had for the first time a program or a show called Culture Pot. And that was intended to showcase our culture. And the reviews that we got from that show, we've decided to institute it and make it a permanent part of Culturama going forward. So that will be coming back for this year. And so I believe that we are doing quite a bit in terms of training, in terms of our culture. I see Calypso King here in the audience, and we have been doing a lot in terms of trying to train our Calypsonians as well, try to have workshops in terms of judging and so on as well. So we believe that training is the answer, and we believe through the training initiatives that we've had and which we will continue to do, that we have a bright future ahead for the culture of Nevis and in terms of education as well.
That is really wonderful. But I'll need you to teach me some of your dance moves, because I've seen you in action before.
I certainly will, and I will do it for free.
Thank you. No, I don't know who will answer this question, but this one is for the hairstyles. I remember one time I left home feeling like $1 million. I went to school in an afro just to be told to go home and do my hair. Are there any plans to revise the old and produce rules against Afrocentric hairstyles among students within Nevis and the wider federation. These include restrictions on cornrows, afros, and twists for boys, and protective extensions styles widely used among black women. See mine here.
Short answer is that I wasn't aware of the extent of the difficulty.
It is.
I thought that we had moved past those days when people were being checked for grooming. I know when I was a boy, they actually used to take a comb and make sure your hair was combed and that sort of thing. I think that as a society evolves, we have to evolve with it. Not to suggest that standards ought to be lowered, but that the youth of today are not the youth of yesterday, and their expectations are different. And I feel that once something is not inimical, it doesn't prevent us from learning, it is not distracting us from what we need to do, then we ought not to be so afraid of some of these styles. Now, the problem always when one is fixing policy or setting policy is to determine how far do you go. And in my own experience, part of that difficulty is that the minute you say, okay, this is allowable, somebody's going to push the envelope and go even further. So you say cornrows and you afro and all of that, but then somebody says, you know what, I like the color orange, I want my hair to be orange today, I want it to be blue tomorrow. I want tattoos all over my face, I want piercings all over my body. You start to get into that discussion now about pretty much what is personal freedom and what people ought to be allowed to do. There's some people, for example, who argue that we shouldn't have to wear uniforms because that's archaic. That's old-fashioned. We should be able to go to school however we want. But there are studies which show that, listen, uniforms create order. They ensure that people act in a certain way, present themselves in a certain way. And that, I think, is where this whole notion about hairstyles and grooming also came from. That same sense. I know I haven't directly answered your question, so let me try to answer it directly now. By saying that it is something we're prepared to look at, to determine whether or not and how far we go to relax some of the requirements at the schools. I know, for example, that when I practiced as a lawyer, one of the early cases I had to do with a young man whose father was Rastafarian and whose son, as a result, was Rastafarian. And at the time, you had, if you were a boy, to cut your hair if you're going to go to school. We were able to get past that hurdle because we argued religion. And under the Constitution, you have freedom of religion, and therefore, if this child was Rastafarian, they couldn't force the child to cut his hair. But there have been decisions, even in the Caribbean, dealing with this whole issue. I recall there was a famous decision from Jamaica about whether grooming and requirements for grooming were constitutionally appropriate, and the courts held that they were. So we have to fashion policy in relation to some of these issues that doesn't throw tradition out of the window, but modernizes our thinking in terms of what it is we're looking at, how it is we can be more effective and efficacious in terms of what we do, and not make our young people feel anyway ostracized or unwelcome. And so I apologize to you that you thought you looked great and they sent you home. It clearly means that we still have work to do to get to that place. But I regret I can't tell you specifically that there's a policy to change this or change that. I can say that we will look at it to determine, because I would want to have consultations with our teachers as well, our principals in the schools, to determine what their view is in relation to some of this. Because as I said, I can see people pushing the envelope and saying, well, okay, since I can do this, you know, how short should the skirt be? How short should the shorts be? How short should the uniform be, for example? These are all questions which may seem trite, but become relevant in the context of a school setting where order and discipline are also important to that those be instilled in our young people.
Okay, the next topic is very important, and it is not just for us youths, but for everyone who would be concerned when it comes to healthcare. What are the immediate plans to improve basic health care in Nevis? Currently, there's a project underway to expand the hospital. How many beds would be provided in this extension? And are there any of these beds semi-private suites?
Okay, I think that I'm here as a senior minister of health, and it's interesting because I spoke to the hospital administrator tonight, and the new wing at the Alexandra Hospital that I'm proud to say is advancing very fast now because we're now putting in the windows and all of that. Now we had to wait for some time to get them. But that new wing is going to house quite a few departments: physiotherapy, laboratory, radiology, surgical suites, maternity suites. It's going to house, did I say physiotherapy? Yes.
Dialysis unit.
A dialysis unit. It's going to house also a pharmacy. Thank you. Upstairs, I'm told, we will have 16 rooms for surgical beds, if you will. Patients, we could accommodate 16. On the maternity, I'm told 10. The bulk of that building, however, is being used for the services that are available, as opposed to just generating more beds. What I think is going to be important at that particular facility is how it's intended to take us to the next level in terms of diagnostic care, in terms of dialysis, in terms of these services that we don't now have. And I think it's a significant investment in our future. It is an investment which I feel is a type of 30, 40-year investment that a government with vision and long-term strategic vision will make. I know there have been concerns about the length of time the project has taken, but I said to the public that this project would have started somewhere in late 2017, if I recall, but we have had stops and starts. And let us not forget that we lost 2 years out of that period of time due to COVID. And so we are currently on target, and despite the criticisms, we are on budget at this point in time. Not over budget, but on budget. And I feel that it is a project that will take us certainly to the next level. So there are a number of new services, a number of additional services that will be available at that hospital when it's finished. We are, however, not just waiting for that to be finished. I can say that we are very proud that we have engaged with a private donor, and we will have a 128-slice CT scan machine installed, we hope, at our hospital by August. That is just 2 months away. I feel proud of that because it will only be the second in the entire OECS having that type of equipment at that level. And so it will no longer be necessary for our people to travel to get that kind of service of CT scan. Our medical professionals that I've spoken to are overjoyed that we now have that capacity to diagnose with some greater level of specificity, and this is what we're seeking to accomplish here. There are many strides being made in healthcare. One of the things that we ought to have delivered that we have not yet delivered on, but which I am optimistic we'll be able to deliver on when we get back to Bastia, is universal health insurance. Because that too is a huge difficulty where even sometimes care is available, individuals are not able to afford that care. And insurance is the answer, especially for young people who, as I explained earlier, may not have the wherewithal, may not have the capacity financially to pay for health insurance. Universal health insurance is, in our view, the answer to solve some of those problems. And these are all things to which we are committed. We have continued to invest, Nikesha, in ambulances. I was very proud. It may sound simple, but this government has delivered 2 brand new ambulances at the hospital for the first time in the history of Nevis. We kept our people safe during COVID. We have an excellent track record in how we manage that. I continue to commend Dr. Judy Nisbet, who led our team here in Nevis, and the entire COVID-19 task force. We got upset with them at times, but they kept us safe. And I'm very, very proud of how this government has been able to manage the limited resources we have to keep our people safe, and we undertake and pledge to continue doing so.
I wanted this to be the first question, but I did not want to be biased. And this is my final question. Mr. Brantley, you know for sure how passionate I am about the environment. You have been frontliners, youth have been frontliners in protecting the environment. Think of the hundreds of youth who participate in coastal cleanup. Youth have also agitated for single-use plastic ban. How have the authorities responded to ensure the effects made by youth are rewarded? For example, I have launched an online petition, over 2,000 signatures when I was 15. Imagine, I am now an adult, and authorities have not banned single-use plastic. And I do not recognize that things may have been a little, I do recognize that things have been a little challenging to get all of this done because of COVID. But what are the plans that you have in store for banning single-use plastic?
So we announced from very early that we were committed to banning single-use plastics. We were committed to banning styrofoam. That those are two things that we were committed to. And we said that in our manifesto, I believe. There has always been the will in Nevis to make this happen. The problem that we ran into is that Nevis is not a country by itself. And Sinkits, obviously, it makes no sense banning single-use plastics in Nevis if it's not going to be banned in Sinkits at the same time. And so we found ourselves having to wait, if you will, having to ensure that we coordinate with Sinkits. Because if we were to ban single-use plastics in Nevis, ban styrofoam in Nevis, how do you prevent Nevisians from taking the boat, going to Sinkits and bringing it back with them? The short answer is you can't, because they're in the same country. In Sinkits, you actually have people over there who manufacture plastics. You have plastic bags, you have plastic bottles. So the appetite, if I may put it that way, for banning it on Sinkits has really not been the same as we have had on Nevis, because there are other consequences of dislocating people, shutting down their business, etc., on Sinkits that we don't have in Nevis. We have to find a way. And so we have suggested that whilst we talk about banning the use of single-use plastics and styrofoam, etc., what can we do to alleviate the problem in the interim? And one of the things that we've come up with, obviously, is recycling. How do we get more of these plastics out of our rivers, out of our streams, out of our guts, out of our oceans, and do something with them? And so we have been partnering with the Taiwanese. They have come to try to assist. And we are more and more having these drives now to collect plastics. The Honorable Eric Evelyn and I were recently with the Taiwanese. I delivered my bag of plastics, which they weighed. How much it was? 1 pound?
I can't remember.
1.5 pounds or something. And I think that we need to encourage that more. But, Nikesha, I'm going to add, not to exonerate ourselves, because I understand the question, but I'm going to add that part of that is also education. That it cannot be simply about cleanups every month or every 2 months, because you keep cleaning the same beach and you keep getting bags and bags of garbage from the same beach. It means, therefore, that people keep dumping on the beaches, keep dumping in the guts. So part of it, and I think this is where young people and the dynamism from young people comes. The banning is important, but also about educating our people about the use of plastics, the use of styrofoam, and how we dispose of them. Because I was driving just the other day, somebody was ahead of me, and looks like they were having a Coke or something in a bottle. They just threw it out the window as they drove. Finish. You go along the sides of the road, you see styrofoam containers that somebody was driving, eating food. They just throw it out the window. We need to start to talk about these things, because that impacts the cleanliness of the island. It impacts the image of the island. But cleanliness is next to godliness, is also next to health, because it also impacts the health of the island. And we need to support those at Solid Waste and what they're seeking to do, to find a solution for plastics, which is a global problem, to do more recycling, and yes, to get to a point where we can ban single-use plastics. I also invite, and I end by saying this, our hotels, our restaurants, because they too can assist by turning away from the single-use plastics. It is amazing that something as simple as a straw, a plastic straw, there are substitutes, there are paper substitutes, food and food packages, and some are already doing it, and I commend them, that instead of styrofoam, they're using a paper package for the food. Paper plates instead of plastic plates, because all of those are biodegradable. I think there's a lot that we can do together, working together to try and reduce the problem of excessive use of plastics and pollution. So I apologize to you, Nikesha, that you have gone from a girl of 15 to a young woman now, and we have not yet banned it, but I can assure you it is something that we're working on, and I think with the passion that Eric Evelyn has for the environment and that we all share, that we will get to a point where that petition of yours will not go to waste, that we will get to that stage where we do ban. And as I said, the appetite in Nevis for it is there. The hotels agree, the tourism officials agree, the appetite is there. In St. Kitts, it has been a bit slow. I think that over there, we have to use somebody like Eric to galvanize them over there to get it done. And that's why it's important that he goes back to Bastille to get the work done.
Which I just wanted to add quickly, I know we're running out of time, but with regards to, I know Mark said that the appetite there in St. Kitts is not as big, but I'm proud to say that since I've been there as the Minister of Environment, the appetite has increased. And because of my push and my department's push, we have advanced the conversation in terms of banning plastics. We've had numerous consultations, even during the pandemic, and the plan is that hopefully soon enough single-use plastics will be banned, because as I said, we've even had consultations with the manufacturers, right. And because of the conversations and the consultations that we've been having, there are some restaurants now that are moving away from the styrofoam and the plastic straws and so on. So I would say that the appetite is actually increasing there, and based on the consultations that we have had in terms of banning single-use plastics, we are moving in the right direction.
Good.
I'm really happy that you all are willing to help save the environment. And I must say to the public that I've gotten support from Mr. Brantley. He was one of the first to sign my online petition that I started.
When you were 15?
Yes. I don't know if you remember, but I used to walk around and ask for signatures, but thank God for technology. I created an online. Okay, and again, we thank you for making this time for us, coming out to answer all the questions that the youth of Nevis and our youth have, and I'm sure they are happy to hear from all of you and the great answers that you've provided for us. It really means a lot to us to know that the youth are being taught about. That is it for me, and the youth looks forward to have more conversation like these in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Well.